To make a public speech sound more conversational, we need to rethink the way we write and deliver our talk. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. 2 things that we can do to write our speech and 3 things that we can do to deliver it in a way that makes it sound a lot more conversational. Hey, my name is Radeep and I'm the founder of Frantically Speaking, and I love learning about effective communications, sharing those learnings with you so that you can level up your communications game as well. Starting off with the writing. When we sit down to write our speech, we may tend to use words that sound great when we read them, but not so great when they are actually spoken. And if we are mindful about that, we'll automatically make our talks a lot more conversational. Try and eliminate words like thus, hence, as follows, or avoid using fancy words like hypothesis or plebeian. A good way to know whether our speech is conversational is that once we've penned it down, we can audio record ourselves while reading the speech. And when we re-hear that audio recording, it'll be easy to spot out words that we can eliminate that don't sound so great when they're actually spoken. The next thing we should keep in mind while writing is to tell a story. A fundamental difference between public speeches and conversations is structure. In a conversation, a simple "what's up" can spiral out into an hour-long chat which at the most just brings out some nice memories. But it doesn't necessarily have an objective. Unlike a speech, which is a lot more structured, you have your introduction, your body, conclusion, and it's all directed towards giving your audience one focused message. And that's how it should be. But if you want to hide that structure, you can do so using a story. For example, if you're giving a speech on how to use YouTube to grow your business, instead of just stating the points one after the other, it's a lot more interesting for the audience if we weave a story around it. Add in a protagonist, somebody who is trying to grow their business. They've tried their hand out at YouTube but not really succeeded so much. And finally, they find a mentor or they find some answers that help them progress through their YouTube journey. And throughout the journey, they face different challenges, they make mistakes, and eventually they learn how to grow their business using YouTube. And in that way, you're conveying all the points that you need to, but you're doing so in a much more comprehensible way for the listeners. A few options of storytelling or narrative structures that you can use are nested loops, which essentially means telling a bunch of different stories without giving them a proper conclusion and bringing it all together with your focused message towards the end of your talk. Or you can try the monomyth method, where there's a hero and that hero has a goal and they're trying to achieve that goal, but there's a villain trying to stop them, and eventually throughout your speech you're showing the struggles and successes of that one hero. And there are so many more very interesting narrative structures that we can use to make our speech so much more interesting. I'm putting a link in the description below of an article that we've written which has a bunch of different storytelling styles that you can use to incorporate into your own speech. Moving on to delivery. Now, the first thing that we're going to talk about is hand gestures. Now, it's such a funny thing that when we are in a conversation, it's so natural as to what we need to do with our hands. But as soon as we go on stage and we have a bunch of people staring at us, it's like, what do we do with these things? And we need to just simplify that by using something called functional gesturing. This simply means that when you're unsure about what to do with your hands on stage, just use them when your gesture complements what you're speaking. So just use gesturing when you're talking about things like rising or falling, or when you're comparing 2 different points, or you're trying to emphasize on something. Even when you're practicing for a speech, video record yourself and observe how many times or how little you're actually using your hands to complement your words. The next point under delivery is to use something called inflection, which essentially means using a tonality to convey a particular emotion. Now, if I talk like this on the happiest day of my life, you're not going to believe me. Because when we use our voice to convey a particular emotion, it almost doesn't matter what words we are using. I'm not sure if that was the best representation of inflection. My point is that when we use inflection effectively, it almost doesn't matter what words we are using. And if we are talking about trying to be more conversational on stage, the reason we want to achieve that most likely is because we want to appear as authentic as possible when we are speaking in front of a crowd. And if we really think about it, we are our most authentic selves when we are expressing our emotions as freely as possible around the people we love. And we're trying to bring that personality onto the stage to help us sound a lot more authentic and conversational. And the last point when it comes to delivery is to amplify our own personality. And this goes back to our point of us trying to be as authentic as we can as speakers. And as easy as that might be to just say, it's a lot harder to do. When I used to Google how to become better at public speaking, I used to hate this particular point that used to tell me, just be yourself. But how do you be yourself? It's not easy to be ourselves on stage when we have so many thoughts running through our mind, when we have so many people staring at us. It's very difficult to appear genuine. And after hundreds of embarrassing moments and a lot of trial and error, I figured out that the best way to find our personality on stage is to just do it as much as we can. When we practice more, when we grab more stage time, we eventually find our authentic personality on stage, just like we found our authentic personality in conversation. And that's about it. How to make your public speech a lot more conversational. If you have any more questions around public speaking, communications, or anything in that space, there's an entire website we've created, a bunch of in-depth articles and resources dedicated just for that. So go check out franticallyspeaking.com.